Have you ever experienced a time in your life where you felt overwhelmed by your circumstances? Maybe a financial crisis, family issues, or even the loss of loved ones. Pretty much everyone has experienced some kind of emotional hardship in their life and knows what it feels like to be in pain. Let me ask you this. Can you think of a time when you felt like you were going to crumble under the weight of your circumstances? But someone came alongside you and helped you bear the weight of those circumstances, solely because of their love and care for you. When times are tough, it feels good when someone else is there for you. These kinds of people possess an attribute that draws them to those who are in pain. It may manifest outwardly through words of comfort, practical support, or just an ear to listen. But at the core of it all, these people have a heart of compassion that causes them to love others in need. I love John Corson's explanation. He says, "Compassion is your pain in my heart." Isn't that good? Your pain in my heart. Compassion is when I feel the weight of your circumstances like it was on my own shoulders. It's when I can feel the pain that you feel as if it were happening to me, causing me to jump in and share the load so that you don't have to carry it alone. Who better to look to than Jesus for an example of compassion? It's one of his most notable traits. There's so many stories throughout the Gospels that demonstrate Jesus' compassion. Like when he raises the widow's son in Luke chapter 7. He and his disciples were heading to a town called Nain, along with a pretty sizable crowd. As they were approaching the city gate, they came upon a funeral procession. There was a woman in the front, followed by the dead man being carried out, and then a large group of mourners. This was a typical Hebraic funeral procession. The relatives of the deceased would carry the wrapped body of their loved one on a stretcher and make their way through town. As the procession passed, bystanders were expected to join. In addition to the friends and family, a group of hired mourners followed the body and would cry aloud in order to draw attention to the procession. The thing that makes this particular funeral so sad is that the man who had died was the only son of the mother, the woman leading the procession. The text says that when Jesus saw her, he had compassion on her and told her not to weep. And then he touched the coffin and told the man to get up. Shockingly, the man sat up and started talking. Everyone in the crowd was amazed and glorified God and began buzzing about the miracle Jesus had performed. But let's back up. Verse 13 specifically says that when Jesus saw the woman, he had compassion on her. I don't want us to just sit back and admire the compassion of Jesus. I want us to learn the compassion of Jesus. I think that in order for us to have the same compassion for this woman that Jesus did, we need to have some context about this woman's circumstances that would help us truly understand the pain she was experiencing. We already know that this woman had just lost her only son. But not only that, the text identifies her as a widow as well. So this woman had already lost her husband, and here her only son was dead, her last means of support. Once the crowd dissipated and everyone went back to their homes, she would be left penniless and completely alone. More than likely, she was past the age of childbearing and would not marry again. Unless a relative would come to her aid, her future did not look bright. In the first century, it was very difficult for a woman to earn her own living. And some unmarried women even became prostitutes, as career choices for women were slim. Without anyone to provide for her, this widow would have been an easy target for swindlers and muggers, and she likely would have been reduced to begging for food. With these potential scenarios playing out in her head, she was no doubt flooded with fear and anxiety of what the future may hold for her, in addition to the pain that she felt after losing her only child. When Jesus saw this woman in all of her turmoil, his heart overflowed with compassion. Her pain was in his heart. He knew the difficulty she would have to face moving forward and the fear that came with it. He could see the weight of her circumstances bearing down on her, and he moved in to share the load. You see, this is where compassion differs from sympathy. Jesus didn't just feel sorry for the widow as he passed by. No, the pain he felt for her was so great, it moved him to action. When Jesus came near to the woman, he said, "Don't cry." Now, under normal circumstances, that would be a terrible thing to say to someone who had just lost a child. But Jesus, who is the Lord over death itself, is going to change the circumstances. And he did just that. With a simple statement, Jesus brought this woman's son back to her. This story gives us a glimpse of God's heart for us. Knowing the crushing weight that sin placed on our backs, God felt our pain in his heart, and it moved him to action. The cross. Jesus was God's ultimate act of compassion. I think that should be enough to move us to action when we encounter someone in pain.